Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Top 15, and this week we're going to focus on the 15 best turn-based RPGs on the Nintendo Switch as of 2020. Now, I've actually already done a Top 15 JRPG list for the Switch, as well as a Top 15 Western RPG list, and while I've actually done 2D platforming, 3D platforming, Metroidvanias, and well, the list just kind of goes on and on from there if you want to go check those out, but maybe you're in the mood for a good turn-based RPG. Well, I think I can actually help you out there because I think the Switch has some phenomenal turn-based RPGs. Now, with that said, do remember that this is only my opinion and yours may be completely different than mine. And if that is the case, let me know some of your favorites as well in the comments below. And I do enjoy seeing other games in the comments because it helps everybody discover some new great games, including myself. With that said though, let's get right into the list. At number 15, I have Darkest Dungeon, which not a lot of people really seem to know about. I've never really heard many people talk about this game, but it is a really good game. It's a roguelike turn-based RPG with permadeath on your characters. It also has a grotesque horror-like art style, and I think it's very fitting for Darkest Dungeons and the mood it tries to convey. I say this because this is a very difficult game, and it even has stress levels in the game where your characters can die for different stress level reasons. It's a twist on the genre, but I think it's interesting and keeps you on your toes. I myself like challenging games, and I think Darkest Dungeon fits that need very well, so if you're like me at all, you'll probably like Darkest Dungeon. Child of Light is an indie darling that released back in 2014, and to see it come over to the Nintendo Switch is nothing short of exciting. The watercolor art style is not only perfect for this turn-based RPG, but it pops off the mobile Nintendo Switch screen. I've always really liked the art style in Child of Light, but beyond that, it's a very solid RPG. It uses an active time battle system that you have to monitor closely, as there is a bar at the bottom of the screen to show which character goes next and how soon. The catch though is that you also have a cast time, and if you don't get your attack off before your enemy hits you, well, you'll lose a turn. This makes the gameplay much more strategic, and even outside of the battle is a real joy as you can traverse a 2D world almost kind of like a Metroidvania. So yeah, I do think that Child of Light is a really good game and definitely worth a try. Mutant Year Zero is one of those games that really just doesn't get the attention that it truly deserves. Mutant Year Zero is heavily inspired by XCOM, so if you've ever played that game, you'll probably have an idea of what you're getting yourself into, and I do love the tactical gameplay in these type of games. See, the thing is, positioning does matter, and one clever thing that Mutant Year Zero does is that you can get an edge on your enemy before the battle even starts by using its stealth-based traversal, so you can pretty much position your squad the way you want before entering a battle as long as you aren't spotted. It makes Mutant Year Zero even more tactical and rewards players who are patient. I also like the characters a lot in this game and the gritty post-apocalyptic art style. I mean, you have a mutated duck and a pig on your team with a snarky attitude. You gotta love it. If you're just looking for a great story-based game, Banner Saga should immediately go to the top of your list. Banner Saga has a great story that is interconnected within a trilogy. You, the player, will make several tough choices along the way that has real consequences to those actions, but beyond that, Banner Saga also has a really fun turn-based combat system. You are placed on a grid-based map and control several characters, and by using strategy, positioning, and teamwork, you'll fight your way to a grueling victory. I, however, will always recommend players to start from the first game, considering how important the story is within Banner Saga. If there's one game on this list that has truly surprised me, it's Operencia. Operencia is a game that I never thought I would have liked. It's an old-school first-person dungeon-crawling turn-based RPG. In the overworld, you will travel several well-imagined dungeons, and they are highly creative. In one dungeon, you may fight toads in an underwater dungeon, while the next you may fight skeletons in some kind of floating castle. There is several puzzles along these dungeons, and each character in your party is whimsical and a joy to listen to. And then there is the excellent turn-based combat. I don't think the story is anything exceptional or anything, but it was enjoyable, and because the characters are just so great, it's a joy from beginning to end. Undertale is a turn-based RPG like no other, and some fans are insanely in love with this game. While yes, it does have a very old-school basic-looking art style, something like maybe Earthbound, don't let that distract you from how good this game is. It has a charming cast of characters, and a world that will always take you by surprise, and a fantastic soundtrack to go along with all of that. As I said though, it's like no other RPG, and what do I mean by that exactly? Well, you can actually beat this entire game without ever defeating a single enemy, because the combat, you can also make friends out of the monsters you find. This is done in several different ways, and you must also protect your little heart as an enemy tries to attack you. It's weird, but it's also oddly great. Valkyria Chronicles is one of the more unique games on this list, and actually it's one of the more unique games period, with its strategic combat. You can walk around or drive around large battlefields, which is turn-based combat to put yourself in a place to wipe out enemy units, and it can be exhilarating trying to outwit your opponent with good positioning and the right tactics. There really isn't anything quite like the combat of Valkyria Chronicles, and I also like the cel-shaded art style a lot. It really stands out and it fits very well on the Nintendo Switch. And then there is its story, which is equally as good, making about every character interesting in certain aspects. Now, if we're just ranking these off of the combat alone, Octopath Traveler is one of the best turn-based RPGs on this list. It's super fun right out of the gate trying to find enemy weaknesses. It looks and plays very similar to Final Fantasy VI, which is arguably the best JRPG ever made. With that said, Octopath Traveler actually has you taking the role of 8 different characters with their own unique stories, and this is both a good thing as well as a bad thing. It's not like other games where there is some world-ending threat, but instead each story is a little bit more personal, and they aren't actually connected. So while the characters can play together in the same party, they don't actually impact one another, and while some characters are highly interesting, others are just a little so-so. My favorite thing about this game though is the old school Final Fantasy VI-like art style mixed in with this gorgeous 3D pixelated world. I love it and I hope to see more games use this type of art style going forward. Disgaea 5 is one of the wackier games you're ever going to play. The entire cast of characters is demons, though they don't really seem to do a great job at being evil. While they're very odd, dude, they will have you laughing more often than not. Really, the entire story doesn't take itself seriously, and I do find it amusing, but the gameplay is also a lot of fun. Each character class has their own unique abilities, including special characters, and you move along a grid-based map, and can even throw your partners to reposition. It can be very strategic, and it's also an incredibly lengthy game. While the story can be beat in roughly around 56 hours, which is already long, it goes way longer than that if you really enjoy Disgaea 5. The reason for this is because the leveling system in Disgaea 5 is absolutely absurd. You can level up your characters to level 9,999, and this doesn't even include weapon leveling. It's just crazy, but it is a lot of fun, and I'll highly recommend this game to absolutely anybody who enjoys RPGs. If somebody ever told me 10 years ago that a Mario and Rabbids game would exist, let alone be good, I wouldn't have believed you, but well, it's true. And if you think about it, Mario is not really a stranger to RPGs. There is the Mario and Luigi saga, there's also Paper Mario and even Mario RPG before that. However, Mario and Rabbids is arguably the same quality. Now, it is a bit different though because it's more similar to something like XCOM, but it somehow works. It's got a ton of charm to it, the overworld is fun to explore, which is no shocker being a Mario game, and the characters are a lot of fun with their own unique abilities. This really is a top quality game that doesn't get near as much recognition as it deserves, and it even has some Donkey Kong DLC. When it comes to turn-based tactical RPGs, Fire Emblem Three Houses is arguably the best we've ever seen. The combat is exceptional with well thought out boards that has several game-changing elements, and by using your surroundings as an advantage, whether that be the forest or some fog, you can battle your way to victory. There is a real strategical element to Fire Emblem, especially if you have the permadeath option turned on, and it also boasts a solid story with a social aspect to it, as you can bond with your companions throughout the school. Each house has their own characters and story, and because of that you can play the game 3 separate times with completely different scenarios depending on what house you choose, making this game well over 100 hours long. That is massive, but it's also of very high quality. The Dragon Quest franchise has consistently been among the best RPGs in the entire industry, and Dragon Quest XI is a perfect example of this. However, with many long-running franchises, they often abandon their roots, though Dragon Quest XI is not one of those games. In fact, Dragon Quest XI keeps it very old school and plays very similar to old 90s turn-based JRPGs. It has a great story and cast of characters. I also really like the Dragon Ball-like art style considering it did come from the same artist, and the combat, while maybe old school, it's very well done. In fact, I think this is the best RPG of its kind made in recent years, and thanks to all of its bonus content, the best place to play Dragon Quest XI is the Nintendo Switch. Oh, how I cannot give enough praise to Divinity Original Sin 2. While these type of games aren't necessarily the most popular games for console players and are much more popular among PC fans, Divinity Original Sin 2 is an absolute must-play game for any type of RPG fan. The combat is legitimately probably the best I've ever seen in these type of games, and using your surroundings to your advantage has never been more true while playing Original Sin 2. The story is also very engaging with a lot of interesting characters, and it even has cooperative gameplay. I must also say that choosing a character in this game is incredibly important in how you interact with the world because certain characters are treated just a little bit different than others. As an example, you can play as a skeleton, though you might want to cover your head when talking to NPCs, or else they might be a little scared. I know these type of games can be intimidating, but I really do encourage you to try Divinity Original Sin 2 out for yourself. You may be surprised at just how good this game is. A part of me wanted to place the Final Fantasy games as number 1 on this list because they truly are special. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12 are all excellent games, and really everybody has their own favorite in the Final Fantasy franchise. And no matter what your favorite is, well, they're all excellent. I can assure you they have some of the best stories ever made in games. They all have a fun turn-based combat system, and they are quite unique depending on which one you play, especially 8 and 12. The characters as well are among the very best. There is a reason that these games are just so beloved, and if for whatever reason you haven't played these games yet, go do yourself a favor and play them. They have aged incredibly well, and it's shocking just how good these games are even today, decades later. They really are that good. And number 1 on this list goes to none other than Pokemon Sword and Shield, which has probably been the most controversial Pokemon game that I have ever seen to date. But with that said, it's still a great game and does have some new additions to the formula. The main one being the Wild Areas, which is a massive location that you can explore to find Pokemon roaming the world. You can even do raid battles there to catch rare Pokemon with hidden abilities. It's a great new addition, and I even like how they treated the gym battles, and it does make the gym battles much more important. The only thing that I didn't really care for was the Gigantamax stuff turning your Pokemon big, but nonetheless the main reason that I chose Pokemon to be the number 1 turn-based RPG on this list is that I do think Pokemon has the deepest combat system out of any turn-based RPG due to just how many options you have when it comes to making a team. Mixing and matching teams based off of nature, EVs, you have typing, movesets, abilities, held items, and the list just goes on and on. It just makes the combat extremely strategic, especially if you play online. And theoretically, Sword and Shield should only improve from this point forward thanks to its expansions releasing later this year. And if you do enjoy Sword and Shield enough and play competitively, you may find yourself putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into Sword and Shield. Anyways though, that's it for this list, but if I forgot to mention any of your favorite games, let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.